will come first, and the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn, and that line is what we reach. So remember me when I'm gone.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Hey, thought you could leave without saying goodbye.
I used to say I lived my life a quarter mile at a time. And I think that's why we were brothers. Because you did too.
This is Two Steps Ahead podcast, and too many of us have felt the sting of death, have been left with wondering why. Why did it happen? Why now? Why so soon? And that's what we're going to talk about here on the show is grief. You know, it's everywhere. I'm sure by now, everybody, whether it was pre-COVID, COVID, or post-COVID, experienced some sort of death. Open up social media, and it seems like every day somebody's posting something about someone who passed away. A couple of colleagues of mine, former colleagues working at radio stations, posted about their mom passing away. Another posted about another colleague who passed away. Another friend posts about a loved one passed away, all very young, considering. Then you take a look at perhaps pets. People posting their dogs going across the Rainbow Bridge. Or even like celebrities, Gene Hackman, George Foreman. And so it's not just the grief of death, though, when you take a look at the stuff that we go through. Sure, there's the bereavement of losing a loved one, the loss of a pet. But what about some of the other things that we go through? Broken relationships, maybe divorce. Whether you're a child or the adult that's in that relationship, divorce hits hard, in fact, for a lot of people. Or what about you just go and you get a diagnosis? Seems like not only are we seeing more and more people pass away, and maybe we're just exposed to the information a little bit more than we were maybe in days gone by with the advent of social media. But you've got now, people getting sick. Again, a slew of people on social media. People I know that I've met either through social media or just friends keeping in touch through social media. Illnesses, sickness. And that could be devastating, trying to deal with the loss of health. Or what about the loss of job? A lot of people losing their jobs. Or financial stability. So there's a lot of different loss that we experience, a lot of different ways that we grieve and go about it. Some impact us more than others. Perhaps the loss of a parent or a colleague might affect us a little bit differently than perhaps Gene Hackman or George Foreman. But to others, it might impact you a lot. I mean, you think about Paul Walker in that opening montage there, that intro. A lot of people were invested in that Fast and Furious franchise that he was a part of. And so when he passes away, it's an impact. And then the next movie that comes out and he's not in it, it's a big difference. Or what about in 2024, you look at the loss of Shannon Doherty from the 90210 fame. And before that, you had Luke Perry. A lot of people were big fans of 90210 or Matthew Perry, Friends. So even though you might not know somebody personally, maybe you vested your time into a show and that loss hits home. Or the loss of a pet. Or perhaps the looming loss of social media. January 2024, TikTok went away for 12, 14 hours. Looks like it might happen again. A lot of people lamenting the loss of social media. So there's a lot of different losses. Losing friendships in the last few years because of politics. How many friendships have been lost? Maybe you've endured a hurricane or a wildfire and you've lost your house your home, your security, or maybe just had to sell the home, move on because the job takes you someplace else. Maybe that dream, the dream is over, whatever that might be. So there's a lot of different loss that one could take and suffer. It's not just the loss of life, but there's a lot of things that we're going through, a lot of hardships, a lot of emotional pain in society today. And it seems like it's everywhere. I mean, before you used to be able to turn to entertainment, whether it be maybe music or television or movies, and you get that escape, maybe radio, talk shows, you get that escape. But now everything is the great divide. You're one side or the other. There's a lot of hate going on, a lot of loss of friendships, a lot of loss of conversation, all kinds of things. And so again, that grief that we all go through. March Madness, your team loses and you suffer that loss, that grief. Or perhaps your child is on a high school team or collegiate team, football, basketball, baseball, little league, and they lose a game. They win, you get high and excited, but that loss kind of hurts. Maybe not every single loss, but maybe there's the loss of a championship, or maybe it's the final game of your senior year in high school and you're never going to play the sport again unless it's perhaps, recreational sports. But this is the final competition. I think back to a few things. Obviously, there's loss of people. The first experience with true loss was my friend Chris back in high school. Never really experienced the death of someone before. And then all of a sudden there's a void in life. That void's been there since. You don't really get over it. And then, of course, some grandparents, grandfathers, shortly thereafter. And then throughout the years, you hear classmates or friends or coworkers. And then you get to the point where you start to realize that your family around you and people around you are starting to get up in age as time marches on. And you start to realize that whether it's yourself with your family, your parents, your relatives, maybe close friends with their parents and relatives, and other people with their parents, I mean, that parental generation is starting to become 80 and 90 years old. There's going to come a period of time where they start passing on. And are we prepared for that? And so when you take a look at it, it's something that I don't think we really prepare for. It kind of blindsides us, takes us by surprise. And even though it's kind of a morbid conversation to have, but maybe we do need to kind of prepare ourselves. Maybe we do need to understand that life is fragile, that at the drop of a hat, there could be loss of life, loss of job, loss of friendship, the stroke of a pen or keyboard clacking, end something. Or you leave home for the day, come back that night after work, and the pet's not there. Pet ran away. Pet passed away. Something. And when we do that, they say you go through the 5 stages of grief. And in case you don't remember or don't know what the 5 stages of grief are, let's take a little bit of a light-hearted approach to start the conversation.
Try something new, Homer. What'll it hurt you, Homer? I never heard of a poisoned pork chop.
Your wife agreed that I should break this to you.
No need, Doc. I can read Marge like a book. Woo! It's good news, isn't it?
No, Mr. Simpson.
Oh.
If, in fact, you've consumed the venom of the blowfish, and from what the chef has told me, it's quite probable, you have 24 hours to live.
24 hours?
Well, 22. I'm sorry I kept you waiting so long.
Oh, Marge, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
Well, if there's one consolation, it's that you'll feel no pain at all until sometime tomorrow evening when your heart suddenly explodes. Now, a little death anxiety is normal. You can expect to go through 5 stages. The first is denial.
No way, because I'm not dying.
Second is anger. After that comes fear.
After fear. What's after fear?
Bargaining.
Doc, you gotta get me out of this. I'll make it worth your while.
Finally, acceptance.
Well, we all gotta go sometime.
Mr. Simpson, your progress astounds me. I should leave you two alone. Perhaps this pamphlet will be helpful.
So you're going to die.
Is that something that you experience when you hear about it? You go through denial, a period of grieving when you refuse to accept what really happened, accept or acknowledge the death of someone, avoid the topic of conversation, saying it wasn't true, didn't happen. That's okay if you do. And see, it depends on what that loss is, whether it's a loss of a person, loss of a job, a loss of whatever. I've heard stories of people that have lost their job because their identity was in their job. They lost their job, and instead of telling their family, their spouse, other people, they just got up and pretended like they were going to work every day and they would go do whatever. Obviously did not have a job, but they would go do whatever to make it look like they still had their job because they didn't want people to know. They were in denial that they lost their job. We're in denial because we lost a friend. We're in denial because a loved one passed away. It's hard to accept. It's hard to accept the news. I don't think the human psyche, the soul, is equipped to handle that information like that. It's unexpected a lot of times too. You know, we think of Gene Hackman, for example, just passed away recently here in 25. 95 years old. I think it was around Christmas time of 24, maybe Thanksgiving, somewhere in there. They just had photos of him at a gas station walking about. Seemed rather healthy. But being 95, you come to expect that eventually loss of life is going to happen. But then when it does, it's kind of unexpected. You're kind of like, whoa. Takes you off guard when you hear the news, when it hits the headlines. Or perhaps my grandmother, for example. I had two grandmothers that lived to be in their 90s. And so at some point, we know we don't live forever. And we know by the time you get into your 90s, any moment, death could be imminent. But then when it happens, it doesn't make it less sad. But maybe there's a little bit of expectation that it's going to come, but it's not less sad. It doesn't affect you less, as opposed to saying a 17-year-old dying in a car crash senior year in high school, or perhaps somebody taking their own life in high school, or a child suffering the loss of a mother or a parent. And then how about getting angry, getting upset? Is that a part of your grieving process? Maybe you blame somebody. I mean, I know with my friend Chris, when he passed away, it was a car accident late one night, Friday night, coming home from a night out. In fact, earlier that evening, I actually saw him at the movie theaters, had a quick conversation. He was coming in, I was leaving. My movie was over, his was about to start. We had a brief exchange, and then somebody asked him for a ride home. So he took that person home. If he hadn't taken that person home, may not have had that car accident. If he had went from the movie theater to home instead of dropping somebody off, sure, it could be easy to get angry at that person for asking for a ride on a rainy night, late Friday night in February. Do you blame the medical profession that gives you the diagnosis? Maybe you get angry at God. There's a lot of people, whether you have faith or not, but there's a lot of people that blame God. In fact, I just read something today about how they were suffering from the loss of a child and how God owed them an apology for taking their child. Now, that's a whole different conversation, but there's that anger at God or higher power. Maybe you blame yourself. Survivor's guilt. You're the one that survived. You survived an accident. You survived a bunch of people getting fired at work. Whatever it is, you have that survivor's guilt. So you blame yourself. Or do you fall into a depression, a depressive state? You know, you can't believe what's going on and you try to bargain your way out of it. You try different things to be cured. A friend of mine, Bruno, it was about June one year, I got a phone call from him. He was diagnosed with liver cancer, or actually I guess it was lung cancer. but it went into his liver, and so it metastasized, and he was stage 4. Go look it up, and he had about 6 months. But you start looking for all these trials, start looking for all these medicines that might work. Fortunately, nothing really worked. He passed away about 6 months after the diagnosis. For some, things do work. Many people I know have had cancer and gotten over it. People I know have had cancer and passed away from it. Why do some live, some don't? Are you angry about that? Do you bargain with God? Hey, you cure me, heal me, get me out of this situation, and I'll never do it again. How about that sadness, hopelessness that you feel when a loved one is gone? Maybe you don't feel like doing the activities that you once did. Maybe you have a lack of energy. Maybe people get on your nerves a lot more because you're going into that depressive state because of loss. I mean, there's a lot of times when, let's just take it something simple, or maybe it's not as simple, but something simpler as a team loses. Your team loses. Maybe it's a big rivalry. You got USC, UCLA, Florida, Florida State, USC, Notre Dame, Boston Yankees, all kinds of things, right? There's all kinds of those rivalries out there. But when you get down to the collegiate level, USC, UCLA, for example, growing up in Los Angeles, big rivalry. And one team wins. The other side, how many times I posted something on social media kind of sticking it to Bruin fans because USC beat UCLA in football. And you kind of get some people just, whatever. Then other people get upset about it. They get angry. And they type back something, right? But there's a loss because a mourning, a period of time. And you don't want other people to remind you about it. So you go maybe wallow in the mire with other people, other fans. You commiserate together. But you're agitated by the USC fans because they won, or you're agitated by the other team's rival because they won. Or maybe you're a player and you lost, so you get agitated because you have to go shake hands with them because you're mourning the loss. And I think all that, and we like to put it as, it's sportsmanship. We need to do something because it's sportsmanship, right? Sportsmanship is the thing that we need to do. And that's true, we do need sportsmanship, but there's also a time where we have to realize that what we're going through, our emotions are real. It's hard to suppress them, especially when you put in the blood, the sweat, and the tears to prepare for something like a sporting event, or you vested your time in watching your team play. And then finally, you get to the point where you just accept what happens. You come to terms with it. You realize that this is it. There is no changing the outcome. It's over. Here's Billy Bob Thornton talking about the loss of his brother.
My brother, Jimmy, he was a young guy. In 1988, he died suddenly of a heart problem that they didn't know he had. He was 2 years younger than me. It changed everything. I've only had a couple of times in my life when I was carefree, like a period of a couple of years when I thought, you know what, I don't have really any responsibilities. I'm making enough money. I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm seeing these chicks here and those over there, whatever it was. For a couple of years, I felt okay, which is very rare for me. And then he died, and I've never trusted happiness since. I have to really force myself to think that things are going to be okay in terms of worrying about my family or myself or my friends, whatever. Yeah, I've never been the same since my brother died. There's a melancholy in me that never goes away. I'm 50% happy and 50% sad at any given moment. And the only advice I can give people for when you lose someone like that is you won't ever get over it. And the more you know that and embrace it, the better off you are. I don't want to forget my brother, and I don't want to forget what it felt like when he died because he deserves it. That's how important he was to me. So if I have to suffer and if I have to be sad for the rest of my life and if I have to be lonely without him, without his particular thing, his sense of humor and what he brought to life, then that's the way I honor him. You know, I'll be sad and melancholy about that forever, and I know it, and I accept it, and I live with it. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay to have all those feelings. And as an artist, that's where a lot of your stuff comes from. You keep honoring those people forever by singing that song or writing that movie or doing that part in the movie or writing a book or whatever it is that has a sadness and a melancholy and a fear in it. Those are the things that keep them alive, whatever you put into your work or your family or your art.
Honoring, I think, is one of the big things one can do to get over. Well, you don't really get over it. You get through it. See, I think that's the thing that people misunderstand is you don't get over it. My friend Chris died 36 years ago. I know for his parents and his sister, they're not over it. Me as a friend, not over it. You know, the scars are there from the wounds of the passing. Maybe the wound is healed, but the scar is still there of loss. And you learn to cope and you learn to, as they say, get over it, but you don't really get over it. You just learn to adjust life to that loss. And then you try to honor them as best as you can. In this particular case, Billy Bob Thornton talking about, whether it's in that song, that movie, what I like to do is post in memory on the day he died, February 4th, every year. You'll see a post. With my grandparents, same thing. I'll try to put a post up. If it's a friend or somebody that, I had a relationship with as far as an acquaintance goes, pictures, whatever, I'll try to post it up if I can. Just one way of honoring them, honoring their memory, the impact they had in my life. Just like when we look at, for example, the movie montage of maybe people that have passed away. I don't know. I don't really like watching the Oscars anymore or any of those shows. But the one thing I do like to watch is the in memory of the ones that have passed away, because I think there is something to that. People have brought through the movies all kinds of emotion, fun, excitement, love, pain, anger, whatever. And it's a part of Americana too. And so I like that in memory where they splash the faces and the photos of the people that have passed away. Give them recognition for what they've done. And in that one moment, maybe 5 minutes or whatever it is to get through, hopefully each year it shrinks. Not as many people pass away. But as you go through that, it's that one moment you can pause and just reflect on how that person impacted your life. There's a lot of people that, like I said, post some things on social media about the passing of a parent, perhaps, like a colleague who lost her mother or a friend that lost a loved one. I may not have known that person that passed away, but I can understand the loss because of that relationship. Or when a colleague passes away and you think about the times that you were there late at night having a conversation about whatever, or maybe they trained you on how to operate the radio board. There's things that are connected there. But I think the biggest thing that we don't do is when we first go through that initial loss, whether it's the pain of losing somebody, the losing of a pet, a relationship, a breakup, maybe it's a job, maybe you retire. Maybe it's like a good thing, but a sad thing because you retired. And so now you're going on to the next stage, or maybe high school graduation. That transition from high school to college or high school to young adult can be difficult for a lot of people. And so you have that loss of identity, loss of who you were, maybe from college to adulthood. And so there's a period of time where you just have to accept and embrace those emotions, those feelings. You can't let them build up inside because what happens, eventually you're going to snap and then something really bad might happen. So you have to embrace those emotions. Obviously, we have to control them. We can't lash out and be out of control. We see what happens when we lash out and are out of control and snap. But we have to embrace the idea that, there's going to be a period of time where this is going to not be good. For some, it might be more impactful. Like for me, I never really understood, because maybe it hasn't hit me. But when you watch the movies and someone dies and they go and tell the person, right away they break down crying. For me, it's always been later. Like with my friend Chris, for example, or other friends, it's always been like, maybe not immediate, but as time passes, baseball season is about to start. Chris and I would go to a lot of baseball games together. We'd bring our gloves, try to catch a foul ball. We'd talk sports. We'd talk baseball. We'd be in the backyard playing baseball. So that was always a time of year where we'd kind of hit baseball season. For some, we'd play corporate softball, company softball team. When softball comes around, not that I play anymore, but it was like a pause, reflection of the memories on the softball diamond. Or when you walk the halls of the studio and you look in the studio and you see where someone once was, not there anymore, because maybe they lost their job or moved on or whatever. So there's a lot of different things that we may experience, maybe not immediately, but it might eventually come. It might be severe, it might be mild. But whatever it is, you've got to embrace that. It might last for a period of time. It might be a short time, might be a long time. But we've got to acknowledge it. I think the other thing that's important too is not only acknowledging it, but talking about it. And I think that's where, like Billy Bob Thornton, and I agree, honoring somebody, talking about them, sharing memories, sharing how their experience knowing that person is important. I think a lot of times we try to maybe wall it off to protect ourselves, maybe bury those memories, suppress those memories, bring them out. There was a time working at a radio station. Steve Hartman was one of the hosts, and when he got his radio start, it was with Bud Furillo, a longtime LA broadcaster, the Steamer. And Steve started his broadcast career. So producing the show, I eventually tracked down Bud Furillo, and we would get him on the show, and it was a fun time just talking sports and memories and different things. And so we had him on. But then eventually Bud Furillo passed away, we found out. And we had all these little clips and drops of Bud Furillo that we would play during the show, even when he was alive, but just throughout the week when he wasn't on, little drops of like, him calling Steve, a term of endearment or little comments, quips, whatever. And so when he passed away, the board operator was like, hey, maybe we can't play these anymore. And I'm like, no, we need to play them more. We need to celebrate that life, make it a part of the show. Just because someone passed away doesn't mean we have to bury them in the memory archives. We can play them. What about Kobe Bryant? When Kobe Bryant passed away, that shook not only the basketball world, but the world in general. A lot of people trying to cope with that. Go down to Staples Center, and that whole LA Live Staples Center area was just flooded with flowers and mourners and people out there just trying to grasp some sort of understanding. But they came together. I remember going down there and all these people coming together, strangers, jerseys, crying on each other's shoulders, not even knowing each other, but everybody embracing each other because it was a commonality. You had to get it out. You had to talk about it. You had to get that emotion out. You had to be able just to talk, share your stories. And a lot of these people were the so-called 300 Club, where you'd get your tickets in the top deck because that's all you could afford. And they were the ones out there. They were expressing themselves, talking about it, getting that pain out. And then eventually, at some point, kind of starts to fade, the pain, the acceptance comes in, and you realize that Kobe's no longer there. I remember Chick Hearn, for example, when Magic Johnson, it was announced he had HIV and wasn't going to be playing anymore. Chick Hearn came on and made an announcement before the Laker game. He was the Lakers play-by-play announcer back then. And he was going to have, I guess he had his scorecard, and his scorecard had all the Lakers on it for the season. And he said he was going to leave Magic Johnson on his scorecard, even though he knew he wasn't going to play. He wasn't going to take him off. Just a way of acknowledging him. Fortunately, through medicine and healthy living, I guess, he's still with us. Magic Johnson is, that is. Chick Hearn has since passed away. But again, you take a look at broadcasting with LA. I talked about it before in a podcast. Chick Hearn, Vin Scully, these iconic people that we listen to on the radio passing away. It's kind of like the Gene Hackmans, the actors. It affects us. We might not have ever met or known these people, but it affects us because they were a part of our lives in some way. And so we talk about it. We share memories about it. Everybody has a Vin Scully memory. Everybody has a Chick Hearn memory, a Kobe Bryant memory, all these different things. And besides acknowledging the pain and talking about it, what about expressing yourself creatively? I know there's a few people that had murals across Los Angeles, painted these murals of Kobe Bryant, a way of expressing themselves creatively, releasing that emotion. Some put tributes, video tributes. That's one way. When people pass away, you get these montages, these videos of the photos and videos to set the music. That's a creative way to express yourself. Get it out there. A part of the mourning process. Just taking care of ourselves. A lot of times we get kind of in that depressed state, one of the stages of grief. And what do? We sit on the couch. We don't eat. We just sit or we sleep a lot. And we don't be active. I mean, we're already unhealthy as a society as it is for the most part, but we get more unhealthy when we're dealing with grief. And so we just have to make sure that we stay active, do something to move about, because movement affects our mood. The body gets moving and you start feeling a lot better. You exercise, you feel a lot better, even though a lot of us aren't motivated to exercise. But once we do, we feel a lot better, don't we? And so we have to be able to move, get out there. That might help us get over that depressive state we're in, start moving us towards acceptance. We got to remember, too, also to take time for ourselves and have some self-compassion. Being human is to feel. We have emotion. We're designed to feel. And so we need to realize that we are going to be feeling bad, sadness, pain, things like that. One of the things that I like is music, but we have to be careful of music because music can be depressive. We look at people that, listen to a certain kind of music and end up taking their own lives. It becomes a depressive state. Music can pump us up, but it can also bring us down. But to me, I like to sometimes escape into music. The other thing that people try to do is numb the pain. Maybe they turn to alcohol, drugs, other substances to numb the pain. Alcohol seems to be the number one thing in the movies, especially that people go to, drinking to numb the pain. Something bad happens. They want to numb the pain. But we need to make sure that we don't have our escapism through that. We need to be able to acknowledge what we're going through. Maybe do away with the alcohol and focus on what we're actually going through. Getting into a healthy routine. Maybe we need to change our routine. Maybe our routine included the loss that we've suffered, whether it's getting up, going to work, going out with friends on a Saturday night, whatever it is. Obviously, if you are graduating from high school to college to the adult world, whatever it is, things are going to be different, right? And so we have to acknowledge that and maybe change our routine. Maybe seek professional help. There's nothing wrong with seeking professional help. People think there's a lot of weakness in seeking professional help, talking to somebody. It's not. Talking to somebody can be healthy, can be a sign of strength, can keep us from bottoming out and hitting rock bottom. But again, you got to give yourself permission to feel. It's a normal part of loss. It's a normal part of being human, is feeling that loss. We all go through it, and we're going to continue to go through it. And maybe that's why having that support group for anything. I mean, you should have a support group for anything in life. If you want to be successful, if you want anything, you should have that support group there to help you get through, to achieve your goals, to achieve your aspirations, to be successful. You always have that support group. But maybe that support group needs to also talk about how to deal with grief and loss. The other thing for those of us who maybe aren't the ones suffering, maybe somebody else is suffering. Maybe we just need to be there to listen. One of the greatest pieces of advice I got after Chris died, didn't know what to do. I'm in high school. I don't really know how to respond. Okay, what do I do? And someone said, just be there. Just be there. It might be awkward that you're sitting on the couch and they're not even talking to you or doing anything. They're in their own kind of world, so to speak. But you're there. Just the presence can be comforting. Now, that might not be the situation in all cases, but understanding what they're going through and being there for them, just letting them know. Just sitting there. That can be, because a lot of times too, if you think about this, if there was a loss, okay, then that loss becomes compounded when friends no longer show up. I mean, think about all the times I would go over to Chris's house and we'd hang out. Elementary school, middle school, high school, we'd go on vacations together. When he passed away, those moments went away as well. Now there's a void in the family that's even greater because friends aren't coming around anymore because that is lost. Or if you lose, let's say a coworker leaves, gets fired, finds a new job, whatever, they're gone. And you're used to, being in the lunchroom, yucking it up with them or chatting with them in the halls or whatever your work routine was. Now they're not there anymore. That work routine is gone. That work buddy is gone. So if that's the case, and maybe someone else is suffering from that, just being there. Hey man, I understand that so-and-so's not here anymore. I feel you. I'm here for you. And just being around. Maybe not even talking to them, but being around. Being in tune to the signs of grief that might be going on. Maybe we're just there to let them talk. A lot of times we like to offer solutions, right? But maybe we just need to be there for them to talk, share the memories, tell their stories, let them know what they're going through. Just being supportive, that can be critical. Let them work through the process and you're just the ear. Or maybe you just kind of affirm what they're going through. Yeah, I understand, man. It must be difficult. There was a gal I worked with, didn't really work with. She was working at the same radio station, but I never really worked with her. But her husband passed away. And so she went through a period of grieving. She eventually left the radio station. And I think how I got to really know her was I replaced her working her shift. So she had to train me. And so that's how I kind of got to talk to her and get to know her a little bit. But she left. Eventually, she came back to visit because she had a lot of friends that she still worked with there. And it's been about a year and a half or something like that. And she made an interesting comment. She said that a lot of her friends outside of work, a lot of her, intimate, close friendship groups, a lot of them had left because it had been over a year since her husband had passed away. And they felt that she should be done grieving. And they felt she was still grieving too much. And they didn't want to be around her anymore. So they stopped inviting her to things. And of course, it was a couples group. Everybody was kind of married, but they thought she should stop grieving and get over it, I guess. But who are we to say this person should do X, Y, Z in their grief? It may never happen. Imagine somebody being, let's say, married to somebody for 40, 50 years. Or maybe they were high school sweethearts and they're dating in high school, they get married, and now, they've been together for a long, long time. And then that person passes away. Are they supposed to get over that grief ever? I mean, that's a lifetime of memories. The house, the photo albums, every way you look is a memory. The bed they sleep in, the laundry, everything is a memory. How do you get over that? I don't know. But to be there for that person, to say, I'm here for you. to understand what they're going through, to understand their grief, to be that supportive person that's there for them. I think that's important. And then for a lot of us, we got to take into consideration that grief might come and go. It's not going to be possibly a one-time thing or a one-size-fits-all. Okay, grief happened or loss happened, grief period of time, it's over. It might be recurring. February 4th, that time of year is kind of always a bummer because that's when Chris died. October 20th, grandfather passed away. Another moment of like, oh. And you pick out these moments in time. Christmas Eve, Bruno died. New Year's Eve, another colleague of mine when I was working at a college passed away, Scott Carter. So again, there's these nights and times where you take a moment to be like, ooh, that's right, this is the night. And I might not be grieving boo-hoo all the time, but there's a moment it hits. And you're like, ooh, yeah, that's right, this is the night. But then I go on. Because for me, there's also a faith-based belief in me that helps me rise above that. God's in control. We know that life on this earth is frail. We know at some point we're all going to die. We need to be prepared for that. We live our life as if we're going to live forever, but we should be prepared that any moment we can die. Have you driven the freeways of Los Angeles? Or maybe lived in the inner city? Or maybe just you go to the drive-through one too many times. Anything could happen. A virus comes through. Whatever. We are so frail as people that in a moment we could be taken out of this world. The economy could turn, and in a moment, our company. I mean, if you worked in the radio business, you're always on edge that your job is going to be cut. Maybe not so much in other fields, but yeah, that's one thing you always live with. And so you kind of get jaded to the fact that, oh, I'm losing my job again. Okay, I'll just go find another one. Where others, it might be a little bit more difficult. It hits them a little harder, maybe the first time. And so we all deal with it a little different. But we got to realize that grief is different for different people. And it might come and go. It might come and go and leave. It might come back in little hints here and there. We just got to accept it. We just got to embrace it. Let it know that that's real and that's what we're going to do. But there's always things that we can do to honor the person, let's say, that passed away, if we're talking about people, like I do. I post on social media just for me. I don't do it for anybody else. I do it for me. I used to watch Everybody's All-American. Was the last movie Chris and I went and saw. I was down in Westwood, near the campus of UCLA at the Bruin Theater. I don't think that's there anymore. I think it's closing down. But I used to watch that every once in a while. Kind of seen it too many times now, and so I don't watch it anymore. But that was the last movie we saw. Good movie, bad movie, irrelevant at this point, because it was something that we had in common. Songs still play on the radio today. That's like, ooh, I remember what happened during this song when we're out. It seems like that happens when we talk about breakups, right? A rule of thumb was always never introduce your favorite songs and your favorite artists to a girl unless you were like really serious, because if that relationship goes south, now those songs and those artists are messed up, right? Bad association. So music is a big part of our lives and affects us in certain areas. And so maybe it's a breakup and that sad song, and that song comes on that was your song, and now it's a sad song. And it reminds you of the heartache. I was in a bar one time, grabbing a drink. I think there was some people bowling at the bowling alley. And so I wasn't really into bowling. I didn't feel like bowling, whatever. So I go sit in the bar, grab a drink, watch the game. And the bartender and I were talking, and she was telling me how she had just broken up. Well, she had just broken up, but she broke up with a boyfriend, and it took her like over 2 years to get over it. A lot of us would be like, wow, dude, move on. But no, for her, it took 2 years to get over the loss of a breakup. Again, not one size fits all. And there's a lot of things that she had to deal with obviously, in that relationship. I don't know how long the relationship was, never was specified, but again, it could come and go. What about days that are special days? Whether it's the holidays, whether it's the day you got together, birthdays, things like that pop up all the time. They're not going to go away. Like I said, Bruno passed away, got the call Christmas Eve. That's never going to go away. But it doesn't have to damper my Christmas Eve. Doesn't have to damper my New Year's Eve. Doesn't have to damper my birthday. Chris passed away a few days after my birthday. I can celebrate life in those moments. And that's the point I've gotten to. Yeah, the reflection is, ooh, it's the day. It's the time. But the celebration of life takes over. So when you're looking at grief, some might think that, there's a one size fits all, but there really isn't. Some take the loss of whatever it is, pet. Pet's a big deal now, fur babies. A lot of people lose their pets, and that's a big deal. And for some people, it might hurt more than they ever anticipated. I think there's people that have a lot of unhealthy relationships with their pets, but that's a different story. And some that, realize a pet's pet. But when the pet passes, it's still going to affect them. And this one gal that posted on social media lives in Europe, lost her pet. I'd see pictures for the last number of years. We were kind of connected of her pet, her dog. It finally passed away. And the only reason why I knew that was because the post was in a foreign language. I don't understand. It wasn't English, but there's a broken heart emoji and a tear emoji. So I just sent a message and pet died. And she said it hit harder than she ever anticipated. Now the dog was an older dog. So naturally at some point, all dogs pass away. And so, it was kind of an expected thing at some point. But again, it's unexpected when it happens. But it hit her greater than she thought. So, so there's a lot of myths out there about how it's going to affect you. Like if you ignore it, it'll go away faster. When in fact, if you ignore it, it's not going to go away faster. You've got to embrace it. You've got to face it. You've got to actively deal with it, because otherwise it's going to be like a volcano. It's just going to surface at some point with an explosion after being suppressed for a long time. A lot of people think you have to be strong, and there's a certain degree of strength that's required to get through it. You need strength to get through it, but it's okay to break down. I say men don't cry. Well, it's okay if you do. It's not the end of the world. But we're going to be strong in getting through it and not give up. But it's okay to be sad, to feel a sense of maybe loneliness, maybe feel vulnerable, maybe feel weak. It's okay to let those emotions out. We don't have to be strong. We need strength, but we don't have to be strong in the face of loss. We can embrace those emotions. A lot of people think, like I said, for guys, crying is a bad thing. There's no crying in baseball. I think just the other day I saw something where the Astros, some player on the Astros made it to the major leagues, made the opening day roster from spring training, might be a rookie, probably is a rookie. And his parents were introduced to make the announcement. And the kid's crying. And you think that's a sign of weakness. Dude, there's no crying in baseball. We all learned that. But it's an emotional time. Now, this was emotional happiness, and the kid's crying. It's the same thing with sadness. It's okay to let your tears flow if you have to. The other myth, of course, is, that certain time, like I mentioned, oh, your husband died a year ago. You should be over it. Well, there is no cap on grief. It could go on for a long time. There's no specific time frame for grieving. It differs from person to person, and it differs from event to event. Someone losing a job, some people just don't get over it. It wrecks their life. They lack strength in the face of adversity. But then for others, they do get over it. They get a new job. But again, there's no time frame. Hopefully, if it's a job-related thing, you get a new job. If it's a pet, maybe you get a new pet. So there are some solutions, but when it comes to the loss of a person, it's not a one size fits all. It could affect people. It could come and go. Reoccurring grief. Getting on and moving forward and getting on with life isn't a bad thing. That's a good thing. A lot of people will put their life on pause. I think there's a movie, I think it's Me Before You. And at the end, there's one of those scenes where she's reading the letter and the guy who I guess passed away is telling the letter, narrating the letter. And it's talking about moving on. Move on. Go beyond this. Don't let this stop you. I think there's a movie Safe Haven where there's a kind of a similar thing, or maybe like a girl dies. Maybe it's the first spouse dies, and now there's a second spouse, and there's a letter saying, he loves you now. Run with it, type of thing. So again, moving on in life doesn't have to be a bad thing. It means you've accepted that loss. You're not forgetting, but you've accepted it. You moved on. I mean, if you think about it, the wedding vows, till death do us part. Not something that we like to focus on, but when we get to that death do us part, that's when it's over. That's when we can move on. We might not want to, and getting on with life might be something more than adding a different relationship. It might be just getting back to normal routine, being single now. It just depends. But there's not a one size fits all. And so we have to remember that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to go through what you're going. You have the 5 stages: denial, anger. Eventually you get to acceptance. And maybe throughout the years, you have the ups and downs, depending on the situation. If you lose a child, you're never over that. I don't care what you say, you're never over the loss of a child. Loss of a parent, probably never over that either. Loss of a friend, you're never over anything is the point. But how you move on with life, how you accept it becomes different on a different level. How well you knew them. I mean, just take a look at the celebrities that we lost. Gene Hackman. When Gene Hackman passed away, it's like, wow. And all of a sudden the movies that I saw with all him in it, like Hoosiers, I had to rewatch that. Absolute Power, another one with Clint Eastwood. And I thought that it was kind of interesting how Gene Hackman played like a really good bad guy. He wasn't the evil villain bad guy. He was just like the bad guy that was bad enough to still be likable. Runaway Jury, for example. The Replacements, maybe movies you don't like, but I enjoyed them. Went back and kind of rewatched some of them. Even the last movie he did back in, I think it was 2000 at the age of 75, Welcome to Mooseport. Not the greatest movie, but still kind of fun to go back and watch. Or like I mentioned earlier, you take a look at someone like Matthew Perry or Paul Walker, maybe some things that were unexpected deaths, but you don't know them personally, but you're vested in them because you watched Friends or you watch the franchise Fast and Furious, or it affects you in a certain way because now that is a loss. Or what about like Kobe Bryant, like I mentioned, or maybe even like a Toby Keith had cancer, was down in Oklahoma at a football game, and he was there addressing the crowd. Seemed like he was on a comeback. He did a performance on TV. Somebody I know got to talk with him. Obviously, he was ill, but seemed like he was on a comeback from stomach cancer, and then next thing you know, passes away. Kind of stings you for a minute. You think about maybe the concerts you went to, or the songs you listened to, or where you were when you first heard his song, or stuff like that. What about the death of people like Kurt Cobain? It might be a number of years from now, but there's a generation of people that affected them. Or the lead singer of Linkin Park, when he took his life. That affected a lot of people. It's a couple years ago, right? And still did. Remember going to a Skillet concert. When I first heard about it, I didn't really realize that the guy had taken his life, although I'm not really a Linkin Park fan. And they got a couple cool songs, but I was never a fan, so I really wasn't following them. But I'm at a Skillet concert, lead singer's talking about how the suicide still impacted his life. So I looked it up and it was like, that was a couple years ago. Yeah. There's no time limit on grief or how it affects you. We all go through grief differently. We need to have the strength to get through it. We need to have a support system, talk about it, honor the person, honor the job, honor the retirement, honor the pet, whatever it is. It's okay to honor it, respect it, feel the pain, feel the emotion, feel the happiness. I remember sitting in Chris's room the day he died. Actually, he died the night before, but the next day we're all in his room, a lot of tears. And then all of a sudden someone shares a memory where we all start laughing. And now that room full of tears became a room full of laughter and sharing fond memories. Does that mean that our pain and agony was over? No. We're just remembering the good times. Then a month later, a song comes on the radio. Oh, it hits, because that was a song that we go blasting down PCH listening to. Or we're in a boat on a lake pretending we're fishing, and a song comes on, the memories come back. Sitting on the dock of the bay. Remembering sitting on this dock on the lake, just talking about life. Junior year in high school. So again, a lot of things are going to come and go. There's not a one-size-fits-all answer. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution or situation. But what we need to know is that, one, we can get through it. Two, we should probably try to prepare for it as best as we can. Because maybe if we're prepared for it in a certain way, whatever that means to you, however that is for you, then maybe, we might be able to handle it a little bit better, get through it a little bit quicker. Maybe if somebody else is going through it, have empathy, have sympathy, understand what they're going through, realize it could be a while. Just being there for them. That might be all it takes. But whatever the situation is, you will be able to figure it out. And again, I say, if you're at a place in life where there's nobody, reach out. 2stepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. 2stepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. TWO. 2stepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email. If I can't help you, I'll connect you with people that can. I could be the start and help you out. You don't have to be alone. You can go to our website, radiowarp.com. That's radio, WARP, radiowarp.com. And you can click on the 2 Steps Ahead podcast link, and all of our past shows pop up. There's an orange banner across that takes you to our SoundCloud page. You can download audio from there. Basically, you can listen anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're on all social media platforms. This is 2 Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. Hey, thanks for listening. Do tell a friend, because I do want to leave you with this word from Robin Williams about making your life spectacular.
As we come to the end of this phase of our life, we find ourselves trying to remember the good times and trying to forget the bad times. And we find ourselves thinking about the future. We start to worry, thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to be in 10 years? But I say to you, hey, look at me. Please, don't worry so much. Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish. Think of me. And make your life spectacular. I know I did.